Alright. Here we go. So, we're going to do a story on Wes Christian and read a little article about him. But basically, July 5th is when he announces he's being retained by Mullen based on short selling, lawsuit, and investigating. So since our announcement on April 28th, we've been actively investigating naked short selling, and we now have enough intel from the law firm actively investigate to have the law firm active. We now have enough intel to have the law firm actively investigate and where justified, take action against market manipulators using naked short selling. So this is July 5th. Obviously, if they announce it on July 5th, they're talking about it before July 5th. They say June. If you look at this, everything on his Twitter is either about GNS or MMAT or MMTLP, and there's really nothing about Mullen. And then if we look at this, we're going to read this little story and see how scared these motherfuckers really are. So it says naked short selling is a thing, actually. It really isn't, but that hasn't stopped a group of hucksters led by cynical lawyer from conjuring an excuse for meme stock collapses and creating a community now talking up violence against anyone in their way. Okay, so if somebody's talking violence against somebody who's doing nothing wrong to them, that person is probably crazy. Like, it's hard to justify how violence could ever be the right answer, but if what they're saying is these people are crazy and it doesn't exist and they're being violent, but it actually does exist and they're just lying to you, then it's like there is no level of violence we could take this to where we would be looked at in the wrong historically. So, I mean, these motherfuckers are just lucky it hasn't gotten violent. They think that the words are violent, but this shit should have got way worse. It says Wes Christian, like most true believers, talks with the kind of black and white assurance that rarely exists in our complicated world. And let's remember, this is June 22nd. So this is right before they announced that they're working with Mullen, or they announced that they've seen enough to have the lawyers take control of the evidence gathering. And it says Wes Christian was, like most true believers, talks with kind of black and white assurance that rarely exists in a complicated world. This world's not that complicated, they just cheat the world. Rather than religions or politics, Christian focuses on Wall Street, because that's where the power is. Specifically, meme stocks and other high flyers tend to fall from the sky because of pesky things like underlying financials. Christian sees another culprit, the big trading houses who figured out a way, he says, to make more money killing companies than building them. These secretive puppeteers, according to Christian. Who are the secretive puppeteers? We already know it's Israel. Use an alleged market manipulation tactic known as naked short selling, the idea that people sell shares of stocks they don't own, classic short selling, without actually bothering to borrow an offsetting number of shares before the ride down. That part would make it illegal. It's a great narrative, a shadowy network which she says has delivered themselves some $100 trillion over the past 2 decades, and one that a handful of CEOs have embraced with legal help from Christian in the face of plummeting share prices. Like most perfect narratives, this one isn't true. It's doubtful that naked short selling even exists anymore. It's doubtful. Interesting how he says it's definitely not happening. In 2008, the SEC amended a rule called Regulation SHO and made naked short selling all but impossible, according to Pradeep Yadav, a professor at the University of Oklahoma who studies financial markets, and says there's actually no way to associate a particular short sell with a particular failure to deliver. And so this is, I mean, that part is really, really stupid. Well, we know that the SHO regulation, SHO, has not been working, and it didn't work for the GameStop back in 2021. It didn't work for AMC back in 2021, and it hasn't worked for Mullen ever. And in the lawsuit that Mullen filed against the market makers in the short selling lawsuit back in August 29th, the real lawsuit, on this one, we literally address the fact that we have evidence that they are violating the regulation SHO. So this university professor is saying because of this, it's clear and obvious that it's impossible to cheat. And yet we have factual evidence that this was not in place on our stock when it should have been. And even if it did, the 100 trillion idea, more than double the market capitalization of every American company combined, is laughably absurd. There's no example of a company that's a good, solid business where we can explain its valuation only with naked short selling. Can we then explain its price drop? The managing member of One Hat Research, which provides expert testimony regarding litigation claims, valuations, and settlements, tells Forbes it's bad lawyering in face of potentially legitimate harm. So what he's saying is just because there is short selling, even if it is naked short selling, just because there is short selling doesn't mean there's not 100 other factors which could have been part of the price drop. And because they don't have any proof of it happening, he's calling it bad lawyering. But the difference is Mullen has the proof. Mullen's the only stock that has the proof because Mullen's the only retail movement. Mullen's the only one that was abused enough that they had to cheat in ways that they don't cheat on other stocks in order to win. That's why we're winning. That's why the case is getting suppressed. That's why, you can feel the energy building. Unfortunately, the ramifications from people like Christian aren't funny. Just as lies about things like vaccines and elections and cabals have created an unhinged class of extreme political spectrum, undermining the institutions that have made America the global beacon of prosperity and democracy, this facts-challenged mindset is now coming for Wall Street. It's the markets are rigged zeal of the Occupy Wall Street days with the absolutism, ignorance, and digital tools of QAnon. So I love how he defends himself by saying this is like the vaccines and elections. Motherfucker, you can think what you want about the presidential election, but there was definitely things that Democrats did that were definitely illegal. And if you can say that that's not enough to overturn an election and there's no process to input the other competitor as the president, that's all fine and dandy. But there should have been people that gone to jail, and there should have been election reform after they broke the law publicly to the whole world. Now, the vaccines, obviously everyone who's pro-vaccine is basically off that bandwagon. I mean, the amount of, just wait, we're going to get the real data and everything about the vaccines, and unfortunately it's definitely killing people. Yeah, so, when he stands his ground on elections and vaccines. Now, when we go into elections, there's multiple elections this year that have been rigged. And there is one where I know that it's going to end up getting people thrown in jail. And I think it was Mississippi. But basically, the lady that came to do the audit of the election just had a 30-minute view on the local public news channel. And she says, I will die before I let this stand. And she exposed it in a way that was clear and obvious that they broke every law that could be broken, and they made sure that nobody could know the truth about anything, and it is the most rigged election she's ever seen. And yeah, that shit ain't getting swept under the rug. It might take time, but all things are coming to light. Unfortunately, the ramifications from people like Christian aren't funny, just as lies about the vaccine. Oh no, we read that. Okay, so it says you can feel the kettle boiling as a legion of retail. You can feel the kettle boiling as a legion of retail traders struggling for reasons that trees don't actually grow to the sky have taken to blaming and physically threatening everyone from whistleblowers to reporters to regulators. Regulators are afraid for their life, Christian said with a laugh in one interview, speaking about the movement he's helped foster. I talked to a Canadian regulator, a board member, that said, my God, I have to move and become anonymous because they're going to come lynch me. Things got so bad in December, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority advised its employees to temporarily work from home. So, I'm talking one way sometimes and I get angry sometimes in this garbage fucking world, but I do expect this world to get way better, and I do expect to be pretty damn forgiving. even to the worst people, as long as they're willing to change. Like, I won't forgive you if you're gonna just try to pay me off and reset the board and go back to war. But if you're gonna try to be a little bit better of a person, and society's just like, we're gonna start obeying the laws and all these good things, and like, you do what you expect us to do, then like, maybe we can have a world where like the poor people are forgiven, the rich people are forgiven, and we try to make things work out. But the fact is that we are justified in everything we're saying and doing and threatening, because they're Satan. They work for Satan. They are the worst. This 70-year-old Christian is stirring the pot while he also cites... Damn, I didn't know Wes Christian was 70 years old. He looks way younger. While he also cites the usual litany of reasons why a stock falls off a cliff, from fraud to pump and dump. I just wondered. I'm not sure if Wes Christian is 70 years old, but maybe he's stopped referring to Wes Christian's partner, who is a little bit older than him. I don't know. But it says the 70-year-old Christian is stirring the pot while he also cites the usual litany of reasons why a stock falls off a cliff, from fraud to pump and dump schemes to bad management. He always returns to the naked short-selling boogeyman, and he hammers it home in interviews, uncritical TV documentaries, including one on HBO, Gaming Wall Street, which appeared last year. For the past 20 years, he said in the uncomfortably fawning Gaming Wall Street, one of the spaces that I've litigated and fervently and unceasingly is this space, because I believe it's the biggest commercial fraud in U.S. history. Christian's grandfatherly manner makes him a potent messenger. Rather than shaking his fist at the heavens, he comes across as a disappointed coach, explaining to his players how they're not to blame for losing because the league fixes the games. Well, if the game is actually fixed, that's a pretty goddamn fair argument. A fourth-generation Texan, Christian, claims that he discovered naked short selling about a quarter century ago, and since about the 2000s, he built a legal practice around it. Christian's original teammate here was a 6'4" Houston lawyer named John O'Quinn, who became famous for securing a $17.3 billion settlement against the big tobacco companies. When Forbes first took notice in 2002, O'Quinn said he was willing to stake Christian because the hunt for naked short sellers could be bigger than tobacco, which is the biggest ever seen in courts. And so that is like the guy who got the tobacco lawsuit, one of the top 10 biggest lawsuits of all time. Like, the biggest tobacco lawsuit was $200 billion, but this guy got a $17 billion, and he says this is going to be bigger than tobacco, and so I'm going to fund this guy to go chase these guys down, because if he ever gets them, it's over. And I mean, if you just look at my resume, since I started going on YouTube and talking about stocks, I've been in the exact same boat. We beat them with GameStop, we beat them with AMC, and then they just they broke the rules to win with Mullen, which allowed us to get here today. In the early years, Christian tells Forbes his cases were mostly duds. We were just learning this litigation space, Christian says. We didn't do so well because the truth is we didn't understand exactly how this was happening. In 2003, Christian represented Endovasc, a pharmaceutical firm that blamed its stock price crash from $7.50 per share to 65 cents on Christian's unusual suspects, according to documents he showed Forbes at the time. We were skeptical then as well. It's an easy stock to be bearish about. Endovasc has lost $5.4 million on revenues of $293,000 over 9 months, the article said, before ending with the question, what's really making these stocks go down? The way the trades are cleared or how the managers run the firms? 4 years later, the SEC ordered a stock tipster named Porter Stansberry to pay $1.3 million fine for running a pump and dump scheme involving Endovasc stock on the way up. There was no indication of anyone wrongfully profiting a la naked short selling on the way down, because you can't prosecute unless you have evidence, and the way they built it is you can't get evidence unless they have to break the rules like they did in Mullen to beat us. Still, and so none of these other stocks ever hit max dilution. None of these other stocks ever been down like Mullen is down, in comparison to having the most retail purchasing power over the last 2 years on any stock ever seen. Like, that's what Mullen is. Still, the hunt continued. In 2009, O'Quinn died in an automobile accident, but not before hiring an economist, former Clinton administration official named Robert Shapiro, to conduct a study on the topic before becoming Christian's go-to investigator and expert witness. Over the past 2+ decades, Christian says he litigated 21 cases, done due diligence on 72 companies, yet somehow not one has led to exposure of a vast network of naked short selling. Wall Street has more money than God, Christian told Forbes. They're not going to settle unless they don't want to go to trial. None of these cases have gone to trial because ultimately they don't want them to go. So basically what he's saying right there is every time that he had a case that was worthy of trial and like was a slam dunk at trial, that people would come and just offer such a large settlement that whoever he was representing, he had to go offer the offer, and they always accept. And so just like everyone else that was, like, everyone's been suing for their own gain. Everyone's been suing so that they can just forget the pain. Nobody's suing to make the world a better place and change the rules forever by exposing the truth through discovery and a jury verdict. Oh, and it bothers me. Christian's longtime sidekick, a data collector named David Wenger, operating a firm called Share Intel, offers the same excuse. Look, they're making money out of thin air, he says. They're going to go out of their way to protect that. If you truly expose this, you're calling into question the integrity of our financial markets. He adds that naked short sellers have driven thousands of companies out of business, a whopper made without evidence by others for a long time. I'm not aware of any of these lawsuits or investigations that have really done anything, says Peter Malk, a professor at University of Florida. It's telling that you don't see mainstream corporate governance firms or activists talking on these naked short cases. No matter, there's always a CEO. When he says it's telling that you don't see mainstream corporate governance firms and activists talking on these naked short cases, like, what he's saying is what's telling about it is they know something's up. Like, if it was not a big deal and if somebody's doing something wrong and we just slap their wrist and make it better and, like, everyone just goes on with life, like, that's fine. But the reason that none of these people that claim to be activists and trying to make the world a better place are willing to address the problem is because if you address the problem, you address that the whole market's a fucking scam. And, like, there's a very real possibility the market cease to exist. No matter, there's always a CEO, it seems, looking for a performance excuse that doesn't have anything to do with his or her own competence. He's proven naked short selling is happening, pronounced Roger James Hamilton, the CEO of a client, Genus Group, during a YouTube interview with Christian in January. Without offering any evidence, Hamilton claims Wall Street naked short sellers robbed him of $300 million when Genus stock tanked from nearly $8 in April 2022 to less than $1 now, and he hired Christian to help him get it back. Christian says he works on a contingency and also claims he spends about $7 million a case on due diligence, though it's not clear if Christian and his backers front foot the bill or else the poor shareholders of companies like Genus. Now, it seems like Wes Christian is just, like, looking for anyone and everyone that would want to try to take a case to court, and it seems like a lot of these cases were kind of built up around, like, earlier, before the Mullen thing, so that they could have negative results and make people have less confidence in the Mullen lawsuit. But again, Genus never had to vote for more shares. Genus never, like, proved that they were diluting shares every single month for 6 months in a row or a year in a row or even 2 years in a row. Like, they didn't done shit. And so, like, anything that they're doing to manipulate that stock is within the grounds of the market law. Like, they have the right to do it, probably. Like, they don't have to naked short it in order to short it. Like, there's plenty of shares to borrow because, like, there's nobody in, like, there's a few people in the stock. And there's plenty of shares available. Like, I don't understand how you guys think if there's a massive supply that they need to go break all the rules. But when there's no supply, then they have to go break all the rules. And that's why we're catching them with Mullen. Good luck with that. There was certainly a time in the late 90s and early years of the century when there was a real epidemic of naked short sales. Christian's investigator and expert Shapiro tells Forbes. But when asked about today's situation and Christian's allegations of trillions lost to shady short sellers, he backpedals. I can't say how big a problem naked short selling is today, but I can say I've seen evidence that it's been a major problem for some companies. He adds the evidence isn't proof, declining to identify the companies. And so right there, the evidence isn't proof. And that is how this world has stayed corrupt for so fucking long, is that through every court case, the judges are able to keep this stuff out of the courts because the evidence being provided is so unprovable. It's evident, it's potential evidence if there's proof to justify the evidence. And so you have to get into the doorway before you can really validate what they're doing. But with Mullen, again, even in July 2022, they announced that they issued more shares than authorized. And that's why they were voting for all these more shares, the billions of shares that they voted for. And so, that was a full admission that retail bought too many shares and that they couldn't dilute enough and that they had to create fake shares to beat us and literally stop a squeeze 100% illegally. And so, yeah, the reason why Mullen is different is because it gets past this argument. The argument that no one had enough to get into court and see the discovery and get the details. So why, despite any solid proof, is the naked short selling conspiracy theory taking hold now? Blame GameStop, the video game store chain that emerged as the ultimate meme stock after hedge funds had pegged it as a sure loser. So, yeah, GameStop was definitely part of it. It probably was more starting with Tesla. Tesla was the first time where retail came together and just dominated. And basically it seems like GameStop people saw that and didn't like what was happening in their country and said, let's fucking go. Let's do something about it. And they went into GameStop and obviously Wall Street Bets, they all kind of picked the stock, and a lot of that was probably manipulated by the government too. But GameStop definitely let us know that retail has the power to buy a stock and force it up if they hold long enough. And AMC was validation of the theory that we got from GameStop, because we bought all the shares until they couldn't dilute no more, and then we squoze. And then, it just built the stage for the next big stock, the next big retail stock, to be the last and final great war before we expose what's really going on here. So why, despite any solid proof, does naked short selling conspiracy theories taking hold now? Blame GameStop, the video game store that emerged as an ultimate meme stock after hedge funds has pegged it as a sure loser. The skyrocketing stock price squeezed short sellers, in other words, exposed them to big losses. But before the investors who congregated on Reddit Wall Street Bets chat room could claim total victory over the big boys, Robinhood, the online trading platform many of them used, halted buying of GameStop stock. They all halted. It was a betrayal of many of them still taste. The lack of the transparency in the process and the apparent disinterest of regulators to dig into Wall Street Bets folks believed who are obvious improprieties spawned a range of theories to explain what happened. At the time, Robinhood claimed that the halt in trading wasn't because they wanted to stop people from buying the stocks, but because the required amount we had to deposit at the clearinghouse was so large. That has dropped a slew of new clients into Christian's lap. In December, FINRA, citing trade settlement irregularities, halted trading in MMTLP after shares plummeted from $12.26 to $2.90, a market cap loss of $1.5 billion that left 64,000 shareholders stranded with securities they couldn't sell. The next month, Christian was hired by a group that included at least one former executive behind MMTLP. I heard something on this one where the CEO didn't properly register his stock, and so the reason it got halted and you couldn't trade it after the halt and even at a lower price, and they had their money locked up for a year, was because the person who registered the stock didn't sign the registration form or something, and it was an invalid stock. And this just, it seems like the insiders are so guilty that the lawsuit has no teeth. It just doesn't seem like, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to see if MMTLP lawsuit's going to win with ours, because at first I thought their lawsuit was the only one that's strong as Mullen, but there's got to be something tainted about it. Especially when you go when you listen to the investors and the space calls on those people. They're all being paid. They're all reading a script. They won't let real things be said. They're all pieces of shit. and Mark Basil's the king of MMTLP. Investors, some of whom were badly hurt financially, pretty much agreed on the theory FINRA was working in cahoots with Wall Street villains or maybe even big oil companies to help them successfully engage in naked short selling. Shareholders were angry and the bristling for payback. Christian's hiring sent MMTLP social media buzzing. Big things are coming, one fan called. Ace in the Hole said on YouTube, "This is amazing news. The music stops now. Criminals, short, scrambled for your seats." In reality, MMTLP wasn't a stock at all, but a dividend placeholder. It traded a proxy for a potential income of 172,000 acres in West Texas, owned by a company called Torchlight Energy Resources. If one were looking for a reason for the catalysmic drop in MMTLP's price, one might suggest the realization that the acreage oil output would never live up to expectations. Torchlight had bought the land for $3.3 million and at one time told investors it held $9 billion in oil reserves, or perhaps, as some other investors allege, it was due to a quick run-up in price followed by frenzied selling. MMTLP is typical of a current meme stock genre driven loosely by organized buying sprees to run up a stock chosen only because Wall Street traders were betting against it, or at least believed to be, versus unearthing underpriced gems. So I just don't think the MMTLP movement up had anything to do with retail buying, and it was the market makers sending it up to trap a couple retail investors and then create a movement that people can feel like they're about to win justice. But really, the fight was always at Mullen. According to an internal FINRA email unearthed by Investors Freedom Information Act, regulators are looking into the issuers of MMTLP shares and not Wall Street naked short sellers for a possible market manipulation. No matter as with politics, up can now be down if amplified enough times. Ultimately, this is about a revolution against the system, Christian said in January interview posted on a Twitter shortly before it was announced that he was hired for MMTLP. You're going to see in the next month the mother lode of all shares who have been issued and don't exist and come to the forefront. This could be a turning point for all of us in this case and First Base, and we believe it can. A month came and went, and then another, and then another. Now it's June, and there's been no reveal, big or small. Litigation moves slowly, of course, and MMTLP lawsuit has yet to be filed, but how as Christian operates comes with swagger, make grandiose promises, fail to deliver next. As with most conspiracy theorists, Christian has walked into some dark, murky corners. He sat in interviews numerous times with the late Robert David Steele, a Holocaust denier who once claimed NASA and a colony on Mars populated by kidnapped children turned into slaves. This is not true. According to the note on Steele's website, Steele was planning to include interview with Christian in a documentary called The Wall Street Treason and Crime before Steele died in August 2021. Wow, Steele died right after AMC Squoze? Damn, that motherfucker was probably watching me and said, "I'll die for this motherfucker." Christian tells Forbes he never met Steele in person and doesn't endorse whatever other theories you say he supported. Certainly the Holocaust was real, almost without exception. I will do interviews with anyone to get word out the magnitude of this problem. It's junk like this that eventually wakes people up. When Forbes asked Christian for data to back up his claims, suggested reading the book Naked Short and Greedy by economist Suzanne Trimbath, who previously served as expert witness for him. Trimbath, however, tells Forbes she no longer works with Christian. Her book, despite its title, argues that naked shorts are a red herring to distract public attention from regulatory crisis in global capital markets. So she's saying that people like Christian are just talking about naked short selling so that you'll ignore the real problems. Obviously, she is the problem. Trimbath has also unflattering view of Wagner's data. I haven't looked at the share intel data in a long time, she tells Forbes, but when I looked, there was nothing there. I didn't see any value in it. I had a client who paid me to take a look, and I told them exactly in those terms that there was no value in it. In response, Share Intel's Wagner said the comment was indicative of either a direct conflict of interest or not having a clue or both. Trimbath isn't the only one who's changed their mind. In 2019, Fundware, a mobile software blockchain company, hired Wagner to dig into whether abusive short selling was dragging down its stock. According to COO Randall Crowder, the information they received about trade imbalances was of little use. So why does an increased number of companies turn to Christian's firm? Crowder said it has a lot to do with the rise of retail investor. Public company executives look at Twitter and see all the rumblings and think, I need to do something to protect shareholder value, says Crowder. Forbes reached out to former Share Intel clients, but Crowder was the only one who responded. Another skeptic is AMC Theater's CEO Adam Aron, captured on a clip posted on YouTube of what looks like a question and answer session in one of AMC cinemas. As As head of original meme stock company, the CEO, who has thrown everything but the kitchen sink at his plunging stock price, said he considered hiring Christian and Wagner, but came to the conclusion that there was no value in it. Aaron may or may not have known at the time that he was being taped. The video has 5,500 views and has been online since it was recorded in February. About Christian, Aaron said, "I can't say he's never won a case, but he's been at this 20 years, and the number of cases that he's won is not too many. It's all talk, it's not real." So he has won cases, but then it's all talk? He has won cases, but it's not real? AMC had the greatest stock squeeze of retail movement outside of GameStop in literally 5 years since fucking Tesla? And you're telling me that your insiders selling, that you diluting 60 million shares, that the highest volume ever seen on a stock in AMC for 3 straight months, like, you're telling me all of that it's more likely they weren't cheating us at the same time you were helping them, then it's just that there's nothing there. What a fucking clown. Adam Aaron is the worst. To Christian, though, such doubt further emboldens the passion behind his crusade. "Unless I'm in a pine box somewhere," he vows, "this is going to continue." That's it. And so, I just feel like the Mullen thing's been brewing for a long time, and that basically Christian and David got put in a box and said, if you want this to happen, it can only happen one way, and it's got to happen in our schedule, our timeline, our narrative, and you're going to help us build out this long-term narrative. And it feels like they're both like held at gunpoint, locked in a room, and they're only allowed to come out when it's time to do the next part of the story. And it feels like there was 2 endings to this story. The ending where Mullen goes bankrupt and retail gives up and everything gets swept under the rug. Or there's the story where one innocent man comes through for the world and makes Mullen happen. Like, because of me, Mullen can happen. That is the way I feel about it. And, I mean, it's definitely true in the long term, like in the big picture. Like, without AMC squeezing, and nobody was more crucial to AMC squeeze than I was. Like, I wouldn't say I was the biggest influencer, but every time there was an important topic to be had, I went viral enough to change the narrative. And, yeah. I mean, there's no doubt what I'm bringing to the table here. But honestly, I don't think it's possible that America could win back its freedom, that the stock market could become free, that the evil could be exposed unless I was here. I'm the only one they can't justify destroying. And so I put a protective cloud over everyone else. And I believe that is the goddamn truth.